I've noticed my sinuses are a lot better, my body feels a lot better, my focus, my energy, which always improves.
It does get easy. I went to 5 days, and actually the last 2 days were much easier than the first 3, right? The first day is to be the hardest.
Is the little things in your life which revolve around food or how we tend to eat, not mostly because we're hungry or we need to survive, because we're bored, because we're lonely, because we're with company, because we're watching a movie. All these things become really obvious when you can't eat.
Harry, good to see you, my friend. I'm excited by today's conversation, which for our listeners who will not know, Harry is currently fasting. And did you know that fasting can actually improve and make your brain sharper? It can be good for regulating our appetite, for so many things. And Harry is living this experience right now. So we thought today's episode will focus on fasting. Probably have some opposing views here because I've had a bit of fasting experience myself. Maybe not to your levels of extreme.
That actually, I am firstly nice to see you virtually. We saw each other last week, which was great. For food, ironically enough, which is sort of the topic, or the absence of food is the topic of today's conversation.
Shout out to Thai Square in St Albans. I have to say, food was excellent, and it was all the food I had was gluten free, and it was really quite fantastic. To be fair, and it was lovely to catch up with you, my friend.
Yeah, no, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and didn't take too long to get back in the end, only half an hour, which was quite nice for the drive back. But yeah, I decided to do a fast, and I'll go into the reasons why and some of the other things in a moment. But you said you have done some fasting before, have you?
I have, yeah. I've gone about 5 days, just water, and I've done quite a few juicing fasts, but not for so long. What I tend to do, I'd say I probably fast about 4 times a year. So what's that? Once a quarter-ish, maybe more than that, maybe once every 2 months. And I tend to go for about 48 hours. I tend to mix it with my saunas, get rid of, detoxify, get everything going. So I sauna quite a lot. Now I'll use the ice bath. That's slightly different. So I've done it since then. But yeah, I fast relatively regularly, but only for just water. And it'll be for 24, 48 hours. I do everything else as normal. I exercise. Yeah. I'll use the sauna specifically, and I'll do everything else as normal. But yeah,
good. So you've got lots of experience. I mean, I
thought it's a reset. For me, it's a reset.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought would be useful is like chatting about the different types of fasting, so listeners can understand the different types of fasting, but also maybe some caution, like going in and out of fasts, as well as the benefits. You alluded to a few of the benefits before, but I guess. Maybe we could start with the benefits, or the reason why I'm particularly doing this one. I'm not being super like strict on this one, and what I mean by that is I haven't got a definitive timeline. So I've done many fasts before, probably about 24 fasts. Ideally, I would do it, like you say, every quarter, and do maybe like a 5-day fast. But honestly, this is my first fast for about 3 years or 2.5 years, and I just thought it was a good opportunity because my mum's away this weekend. I'm staying in London. I don't have to cook for anyone. I had no plans to do anything. Usually I just operate my life as normal as well because I've got experience with it. But so it's mainly water, but with 1 litre of juice a day. Usually when I do the juice fast, I tend to have about 5 juices a day. I used to buy them in rather than make them all the time. At the moment, I'm just making what I've got. But the main reason I thought I would do it is, 2 reasons. One, I think, I can't remember if I mentioned or not, but I got some blood tests done on account of the foot injury that I've got. And that showed some systemic chronic inflammation. So not the acute inflammation due to the foot injury, but inflammation in general. And I'm thinking, what can that be from? Because I think it's to do with my diet, but I'm not sure, because I think I've been a bit slack in the last 3 or 4 years when it comes to eating gluten, a few more processed foods here and there. And so I'm testing that theory by just doing a bit of a reset, although my blood test isn't for another week, so I'm not sure how it's going to hold out. And then the other reason, which I sort of really only remembered when I was about a day into the fast, is my injuries tend to heal up really quickly, or much quicker. And actually my foot has had more progress in the last 2 days than it did in the 2 weeks prior to that.
So let's rewind then for a second, because you haven't explained yet what type of fast you're doing or what your goal is. How long are you going for? Water and 1 juice a day, but how long are you intending this fast to last for? And what type of fast do you do?
So I think, a few of those things are important. Firstly, it's probably quite a good idea to explain what fasting is, because we might have and you mentioned the word detox before as well. And I want to delineate the two, because some people intertwine the word detox and fasting, and they're not the same thing, but they could be the same thing. So detoxing, for my mind anyway, is when you abstain from a certain thing. So you might detox from caffeine, right? And not take a caffeine for a week or two. And your body is going to detox naturally anyway. It detoxes 24/7. But when you've got it overloaded with toxins, it makes it harder for it to detox stuff. So some people will have detoxing in terms of, you might argue that sauna is detoxing, right? Getting the sweat out. Other people will buy detox teas. I don't know how much they work, right? So for me, detoxing is something different. Fasting is abstaining from food for a prescribed amount of time, or potentially limiting your intake of food. So
for me, the reason I combine the two is when I fast, I am, as you know, I have about 5 coffees a day, right? When up for my own personal, which I do quite regularly, I just go to water. Don't have any coffee, don't have any juices, don't do anything. I deliberately use the sauna. And the reason I use the sauna, and we could probably go into it, is my understanding, or certainly whether it's placebo or my own thought process, but the reason I fast is, and the research that I've done, is apart from all the mental clarity benefits, there's loads of mood improvement and studies, things out there. For me, my understanding is that your body will often offer up its most damaged cells first, and it will safeguard its most important cells. So, and the sauna has a similar kind of impact. So, it kind of, for me, we talked about gadgets before. So, it's expediting the fast really, and improving what I can do through sweating and replenishing with I also, when I fast, I typically do it with mineral water, which is rare for me because we only have tap water. So I try and do the whole thing. So I'm trying to replenish the body with mineral water and good water and those kind of things, and let out the bad stuff that might be in my system, the most damaged cells. And a sauna will help that process of detoxification from the body. But I also abstain. You mentioned detox, so I'll abstain from caffeine while I'm doing it. Won't have coffee. I won't have stimulants, whereas usually I will. So for me, it is a bit of a combo for me.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think, if I had a sauna access as well, I would normally do that. My first ever detox in Thailand, 2012, was it was a detox, but sort of a fast, because you also had fibrous drinks. So you were quite full the whole time, but I was saunaing every day. But actually, interestingly, you talked about the cells getting removed, like the damaged cells. I've got one study that I'm looking at in my book, actually. Short-term fasts of 48 hours, which is what you tend to do, you said, are shown to protect cells in mice exposed to chemotherapy. However, the cancerous cells were not protected from the chemotherapy, right? So basically, by fasting, the chemotherapy was targeting just the cancerous cells, not the healthy cells. And most chemotherapy targets every cell, really. So that's really good. And also, you do water only fast, which actually I think is a really good thing, because it just takes the mind out of it a lot. Because I often do the juice fast, because at the time I was starting it, I think I was running a juice fast, and I was prepping for that. But also I was an ambassador for a juicing company. And so they would send me a couple of free 5-day fasts every year. So I would do 2 a year usually, although I recommend, I'd probably say 4 a year would be great, like every season, to just do like a 5-day reset. And so I found it really easy with that, because you just had it all there, and they gave you effectively 2.5, 3 liters worth of juice, which I would never juice personally, because it would cost an arm and a leg. Right now I've got vegetables, so I'm just juicing what I've got and just doing like half a liter of that, and then the rest water. But the easiest thing is, like you do, just water, right? Keep it simple. Don't need to do anything. But I personally, I guess I did about 24-hour fast on that earlier. So in terms of how long I'm going for, I hadn't decided. Psychologically, this is the first fast I've gone into where I've not decided ahead of time. Normally I decide I'm going to do at least 5 days, and I normally recommend people do either 24 hours or at least 3 days. And the reason I say that is because after about the second day, your body starts to realize it's got time to rest, and it starts to dump all the toxins from the cell into the bloodstream. So you tend to feel lousier, and your blood tests, if you did a live blood test, will probably show a worse result after just 2 or 3 days. So I would say either go up 24 hours or try and go a bit longer. That being said, I didn't make any commitment this time, because I thought I'm just going to do water only. I haven't done more than a 24-hour water fast in 30 odd years. And so I thought I'll take it one day at a time. Normally I go in psychologically prepared for 5 days, but right now I think I've done the third day, but I haven't pushed it. And what I mean by that is actually at the end of the day, I've been fancying like a smoothie. So I've been having like a Huel smoothie, which is not ideal. But the thing is, I'm not necessarily doing this to abstain from food for the whole time. I'm doing it really to heal a bit of injury and also clear up things. And I've noticed my sinuses are a lot better. My body feels a lot better. My focus, my energy, which always improves. So that's kind of why I'm doing it. And I think I'll go until tomorrow or maybe Wednesday, possibly even Thursday morning, because it gets easier. I don't feel hungry.
It does get easy. I think you have to go through the pain. I would say after about 48 hours, I went to 5 days, and actually the last 2 days were much easier than the first 3, right? The first day is to be the hardest. But also you mentioned like the mice experiment. So there's something which you'll know already, and I'm sure our listeners will, called autophagy, or I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. Autophagy, isn't it? Something say it. Either way, it's
autophagy.
Autophagy, there you go. So it's the idea behind that which I was talking about, where your body targets damaged cells and misfolded proteins and the mitochondria and all the things that perhaps are causing the inflammation in your body first. Now, I know that you'll say that's why you need to go longer, because often that process doesn't kick in straight away, right?
No, not necessarily. No. Actually, autophagy can start after about 18 hours.
Yes, well, I'd say, typically what I've read before, it's around 24 hours on, so we're there about, say, 24. But for a lot of people, fasting just to 18 hours will be a challenge, right? So you get these day fasts where people will fast just during the night and not eat till 12, and they have that kind of intermittent fasting, which is something different again. The reason I bring this up is, but when you, as I said, I always continue to exercise as I would normally. So that process is, I don't know if you notice or what, is accelerated when your glycogen stores are depleted. So if you keep exercising and you're able to deplete your glycogen stores first, and again, it's like another hack, if you like, to accelerate that process. And it's really good. It's like our body's recycling system. It's a way of our body recycling, looking after its cells. It helps, really break down cellular fat and all the kind of things if you're into that weight loss piece. But it's really good at sort of breaking down and getting rid of the cells, the damage that you don't want. And as you say, it takes, you say 18 hours, I'd say sort of 24, 48 hours for that really to kick in, but it kicks in and accelerates the longer you go. So the only risk I would say is you go too far, eventually you'll start breaking down some of your muscle proteins, and that becomes slightly, but it depends where you want to go with it.
I did a tracking a few years ago the last 2 I tracked every day. I weigh myself and I do the body fat percentage, muscle percentage, everything like that. This time over the days, my muscle percentage seems to be going down, but like the previous 2 times I did it, my muscle percentage went up, which probably is about right, because if my weight is going down, I'm not losing so much muscle over those 3 days.
It's in ratio terms.
The ratio goes up. But autophagy basically is a Greek word, autophagy, which means eating oneself, right? So you're consuming yourself effectively. But
the reason I bring it up is you talked about the difference between detox but I would argue that is the body's cellular detox system. Right? That's what it's doing. It's detoxing
its cells. Your body is detoxing as it fasts, but what I'm saying is that people will do a detox thinking they're fast. They'll just use the words, but they're not the same thing. So actually, that was the thing I wanted. Actually, I did have a warning and disclaimer in my book, and I thought it's useful to actually say this to people listening, that I put this in the book, but ultimately you have to make your own choice in terms of whether fasting is for you or not. But I've said people shouldn't fast, are those under 20, over 65, never having done it before, and never having done it before, pregnant or breastfeeding, on dialysis, if you're severely ill or recently undergone an operation. Also, if you suffer from type 1 diabetes, but we can get to that in a minute, thyroid hyperfunction, liver or renal dysfunction, cardiac disease, cancer, polyarthritis, gastric or intestinal ulcers, drug or alcohol addiction, if you have an eating disorder like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, depression, emotional instability. But some of those conditions, for example, I remember years ago, I think it was called Simply Raw. There was a documentary called Simply Raw, and it took 6 people for I think it was raw food diet or fast or something like that for a month. And 4 of them had type 2 diabetes and 2 had type 1 diabetes. And 1 was actually able to effectively reverse their type 1 diabetes, which is definitely supposed to be irreversible. So I'd have to check on that again. But that was,
to be fair, I studied, as you know, years ago, sports nutrition and and other bits and pieces. And I read a study, type 1, and I've had this debate, and I obviously wasn't with you, because someone said it's irreversible, but the study I read was reversing type 1 diabetes on a diet of beans. It was definitely bean-based diet. I was trying to find the study, but it was years ago that I did it.
Yeah.
It's always stuck with me that there was a study,
Well,
a
this
case
is the
study.
thing. I mean, 15 years ago, and actually, if you ask the average person about type 2 diabetes, they'll say it's irreversible. Now, I thought it was irreversible up until about 15 years ago, and then realized it's reversible. And actually, you can reverse it with really, in fact, that guy, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, I think he reversed one of his patients on one of the Doctor in the House series on the BBC. And that was very much with intermittent fasting. So actually, I think it's worth going through the different types of fast, because you've mentioned one, which is water only. So that's where you're just drinking water, right? I personally have only done a 24-hour one on that. I know I should really do maybe 5 or 6 days. If I didn't have all the vegetables that I did in the house right now, I'd be doing water only, but I just wanted to use up the vegetables. And it's nice to drink something other than the water, but that is a really nice fast to do. I have wanted to experiment with, and I still haven't done it yet, a distilled, you drink mineral water, but a distilled water only fast. Because
you could do distilled hydrogen water now, mate.
Well, yeah, so I was actually thinking that very thing about 2 hours ago. When I go to Brighton, I've got my distilled water machine down there. So maybe I'll do a 24-hour fast before my next blood test with distilled water and see what happens. But distilled water, we talked about on a previous show, is a hungry water. So it wants to bind with other things. And so some people find that their joints improve when they drink distilled water, because it binds to the calcium deposits in the bones that shouldn't be there, or in the joints that shouldn't be there. Now, the other kind of fasting, which I don't recommend necessarily, is dry fasting. So dry fasting is where you don't consume anything, fluids. Typically, that's done during, I think, like Ramadan and things, where it's from sunrise to sunset. But there was a case, and I read about this in that What Doctors Don't Tell You. And she did a dry fast for 9 days. So no food or water for 9 days. I don't think you could survive 9 days without water. And she was able to cure her Lyme disease after trying everything else for several years. I think in the article it mentions that she slept outside. It was done under supervision in some mountain somewhere in Siberia. And she slept outside so the moisture could get into her in certain ways. But she did cure herself from Lyme disease. So then juice fasting, which is what I've talked about, where it's probably more likely called juice feasting. You're feasting because you're not depriving yourself of nutrients, because you're getting a lot of nutrients in. But you're having vegetable juices, not fruit juices. I think there's the juice master. He has way too many fruits, I think, when he juices and his recipes. And even the company I used to go with, they had too much fruit in. I prefer just vegetables when it comes to juice fasting. The other kind of fasting you've talked about briefly is intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting can take many forms. It can be like you talked about, which is a bit of the 8-12 thing, where you fast for, is that right? Is my maths right? 8-16. So you basically fast for 16 hours and you eat in an 8-hour window. Typically, that's what I tend to do, but I don't think of it like an 8-hour window.
So, I think we talked about this on the show before. I did that for 3 months and it didn't work for me. It ruined my sleep. I put on weight despite being on a bigger calorie deficit than what I was on a normal diet, because I ate the same things, but I cut breakfast. So I was actually eating less calories. And yet during that time, I lost muscle mass, gained weight, and it impacted my sleep. And it just didn't work. I've got a friend of mine, Neil, who does it, and he swears by it. But for me, did not work at all. As soon as I went back to what my body was used to, everything went back to normal.
I mean, I don't tend to eat less calories when I do it, though, I don't think. And like I said, I don't think of an 8-hour window like, I'm only going to eat between 9 and 5. I eat when I eat, and then I just think, okay, what's the last time I ate? Okay, it was 7 o'clock.
And it happens to be a 16-8, but that's become your routine. For me, going into a conscious 16-8 didn't work.
I'm not hungry for at least usually 4 hours after waking up anyway, 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, mate, I need breakfast.
Yeah, so I'm not super.
My body craves it the second I wake up.
It's been 7 years now, but up until 2017, because I remember doing a talk and a goal setting talk, and one of my goals that I mentioned from stage was to do intermittent fasting. So I've been doing it probably for about 7 years in some way, shape, or form, but I'm not doing it there are days when I might just do 12 hours or 14 hours. Very rarely would it be less than 12.
I think it's a good thing to highlight though, because every body type is different. And if you're going to go down the intermittent fasting route, don't always assume you're going to get the result you want. Every body type is different. We all need different things. For me, I find that I've discovered, having tried these things, I've tried veganism, I've tried all these different things. Some work, some don't. But I find breakfast kickstarts my metabolism. In my system, it seems to kickstart my metabolism. It makes me snack less. I feel better and more awake and alert in the morning. If I cut it out, I end up eating more snacks later. It's just maybe because that's what I've been habitualized to got used to. But
it might be the kind of foods you eat. I mean, the thing with fasting though, and you bring up an interesting point. I already talked about people that maybe shouldn't fast, but also women. When it comes to intermittent fasting, I do recommend this book, or I can't remember the name of the author, but I think her book is called Fast Like a Girl. And my friend, his wife, it really made sense to her because she was trying to fast. And it's all to do with your moon cycle, your period, and just timing things appropriately. And actually, whilst it might work for generally men to do an 8-16 fast, it might not work for generally women. It might work for some women, but maybe there's a higher percentage of men that it works for than women. So that's intermittent fasting when it comes to 8-16. But then you've got intermittent fasting, which my mate Ben, who also lives in Devon, that I spoke about. I need to check if he's still doing it. But for a long time, he was doing 5-2 fasting, which you're probably familiar with as well, where you just eat very little on 2 days.
All day. You don't have any main meals, do you? You basically just.
I don't know what the exactly process is, but it's more like you're having maybe, is it 500 or 1,000 calories on the off days, and then you eat normally on the on days, and it's 2 non-consecutive days. That really works for him. Then what works for another friend of mine is called the fasting mimicking diet. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, popularized by Walter Longo. He's a big researcher when it comes to fasting, but the fasting mimicking diet, he sells a pack because it makes it really easy. It's for 5 days every quarter, so it's like you're fasting, but you're not. So it is a calorie deficient fast, but the proportions of fat, carbohydrates, and proteins are really important. And what it does is it tricks your body into thinking it's fasting without you actually fasting. And my friend swears by it. I personally think it's just a lot easier to do maybe a water fast, but for some people, he buys the pack, but there's no reason why you couldn't work it all out yourself and just have the right.
For me, nuts. I mean, obviously you've got to depend on whether you are in the right frame of mind physically or whatever, in the things you mentioned, but it's like a system reset. It's hard when you go through it, but 24 hours after you've come off, you know, only 4 hours, I just feel great. I feel really good. I feel like it resets and regulates my appetite, my sleep. You have to go, it's not necessarily a pleasant 40 hours just on water, especially with the amount I eat every day, which is about 3,000 calories a day, probably I'm consuming. So it's quite a big shock to the system. But when you continue to exercise and use sauna to exacerbate it, I just feel 40 hours later, just feel really good. I feel my mood is better. My inflammation is down. I feel more mobile, more flexible. I should probably do it more. I do it about once every 2 months. And every time I tell you, I'm like, the benefits are really good. But I mean, it is difficult. So your body says, not yet.
I do think that I want to do, and I've been saying it for a long time, and maybe this will kickstart me, effectively a 36-hour fast every week. So where you maybe you stop on a Sunday night and you don't eat again till Tuesday morning.
I'm not every week, mate. No, not that. That's too much.
I think, I don't know, because that's really only one day without food. It's only one day. It's only the Monday that you're doing without food. So it's more, because 24 hours is like you could finish lunch at 3 or 4 and then go till 3 or 4 the next day.
That's what I would say to anyone who's thinking about it, assuming you're fit and able to do so, is I don't always plan it. Sometimes I'll wake up, realize I haven't eaten, for whatever reason I didn't eat breakfast, or I'm able to skip it, or maybe whatever's happened. And I'll say to my wife, you know what, I've already gone 14 hours without food. I'm just going to fast now. I'm going to crack on and see how far, and I'll go 40 hours, because I feel like if you wake up, you've already got, usually after a good night's sleep, actually, which is rare for me, I'll get 9 or 10 hours in, or 8 hours or whatever. And I'm like, actually, I don't need to eat now. And I've gone quite a while. We had dinner quite early yesterday. I haven't eaten since. So then you add up that on top of dinner, it's another 4 hours. Suddenly you realize you're 12 hours in already. It's actually only a 12-hour fast, because you're only realizing it in that moment. So to get to 24 hours, I've got to do another 12. And then to bunk on another 24 hours doesn't seem so painful. So you've gone 48, but in reality, I feel like I've only done 36. Yeah. It's like you get those 12 hours for free. And then I would finish my fast always by going to bed. So that cuts out another 8 hours. So actually, it's not even 36 hours. It's more like 28 hours.
You break your fast for breakfast, usually.
Always break it for breakfast. Always. I usually have that as late as possible. Yeah, always. Because that way I get 2 nights sleep fasted, which is the easiest time to do because you're fast asleep. And you've only got to really last that one day in the middle and sleep either side, and you've almost hit your 40 hours.
I mean, my HRV has skyrocketed the last 3 days, which I knew would happen because my heart rate tends to be lower when you're not eating close to bedtime or at all. And so my HRV is increased by, I think, about 15-20% over the last couple of days. But actually, you brought up a couple of points I wanted to make. When it comes to fasting, what you do realize, and I realized the first time I fasted, and I realize it every time, is the little things in your life which revolve around food or how we tend to eat, not mostly because we're hungry or we need to survive, because we're bored, because we're lonely, because we're with company, because
habit as well.
Yeah, habit, because we're watching a movie. All these things become really obvious when you can't eat. And I wanted to eat something earlier today, but I wasn't hungry. I just was like, I feel there's a vacancy in my stomach, but I don't feel hungry, as it were. And that's the big thing, is that you suddenly realize all the time that food plays into your life. And so I think when it comes to your first ever fast, though, to people listening, if you've not fasted before, you probably didn't do this. You probably just went and did it. But my first couple of fasts, I think, were on fasting retreats. And I do recommend that personally, if you can, just because you're around other people, you're away from your current environment, which can otherwise impact your ability to survive it. And so I think going away from it is better. But when you come back, like I've done it now 24 times, and you've done it more probably by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
You could do your work as normal. I remember going to CrossFit, doing CrossFit sessions when I was fasting. Right now I don't. I might do some light exercise or yoga, but I don't really interrupt my working life on account of it. Maybe what I would say actually, though, to people thinking of doing it, it might be good to start it on a Friday, so that, because you're day 2 or 3, and I got it on day 1 this time, but you tend to get the headaches, or you tend to...
You do get headaches. I was just about to say the same thing. That's when most people quit. You do get headaches, and you'll usually get that in the first 24 hours, especially from you.
Yeah, once you get first headaches, it'll be all right. But that's why I say start on a Friday. Maybe Friday lunch is your last meal. And then by the time you go back to work on Monday, you've gone through the hardest part, really, and then you can do your working week.
My wife's tried a couple of times and never succeeded because the headaches come and she's like, I just got to eat. But if you get through, usually the headaches come in the first day around the evening time. They do for me. Bear in mind, I'll start the day before, sleep through it. So I'm probably now 32 hours in or whatever, 24, 30 hours in, you start to feel it. But then, usually they start just I'm about to go to bed. So I can go to bed again anyway, and you wake up and they've gone. The other thing I do, and I appreciate everyone's different. Mine are relatively unplanned, by the way. I know I roughly haven't done one for a while. I'll just randomly sit in. I don't do it over weekends. I enjoy them too much. I enjoy my food too much. So mine will always be midweek during work. Yeah, but I find that when I really need to eat and water isn't cutting the mustard, I will then do something. That's when I'll actually go into a sauna, or I'll go for a light run, which I know seems counterintuitive because when you're most tired and you feel like you don't need it, it's an absolute distraction. And again, I know I'm depleting my glycogen stores. Again, I know I'm doing the replenishment piece. Whether I am or not, in reality, that's how I feel. So I just go for a light jog, and nothing too strenuous because you obviously you are depleted. But that's just instead of eating. And I don't often want to eat when I'm come back from a run. You tend to want water, so it's like, okay, now I'm ready to drink. There are some little tricks, and I don't know if they impact fasting. You have to tell me how. I've not done the research, full disclosure, but I will look forward to like ice cold water, and I may well crunch on ice sometimes if I'm really struggling, but it'll only ever be water. So I'll have ice in my glass, and that will give me the feel that I'm eating something. That may well change some regulators and receptors in my body. I don't know.
The chewing mechanism would probably make it seem like you're having something.
Yeah, and I think there's something about coming back from a run and just having ice cold water is nice anyway. I don't always want the food. So, and after a sauna, that's lovely. So again, I use little tricks to distract my mind and do something else. And for me, that allows me to go further.
The big thing is I went for a cycle yesterday because I needed that distract. Because suddenly you also realize just how much of your day is taken up with food. Like breakfast, lunch, dinner, especially if you're preparing those 3 meals, washing up from those 3 meals, shopping for those three meals. Even today you came on late and I was thinking, I'm not in a panic because normally we have our calls around 6 p.m., which means I would rather eat before 6, which means I have to start thinking about food about 4:30. Or if we wait till I finish the call and it's 7:30, then it's 8:30 by the time I eat, and I get really annoyed with that. And so this time I was like, well, I'm not eating anyway, so it's kind of fine. But yeah, you're right. Maybe you don't want to do it on a weekend, and maybe it's actually better for some people during the week, because then you don't have that stress of coming back at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night and having to cook.
But you make a good point as well.
You might find work quite hard on that Tuesday or Wednesday.
You make a good point. You went for a cycle ride. Again, for me, going for a light run means I'm away from my kitchen. I'm away from food. You know, again, if you said before, if you don't want to eat the foods you don't want to eat, don't have them in the house. So, you know, cut the bad processed food or sugary items. Just don't buy them anymore. If they're not in your house, you can't eat them. Similarly, if you're on a fast and you know that there and you're hungry, I get out the house, I'll go for a light run around the block, come back 20 minutes later. So I'm not talking long distances here. We're talking 3 or 4 kilometers, very light, easy. Come back, and your body actually wants ice cold water. And I don't feel like I have to go into the cupboards, but I need to get out to distract myself from walking into the kitchen and opening that cupboard or grabbing that snack. So
yeah, I mean, it's out of sight, out of mind at the end of the day. I mean, I went in, and actually going back to why I actually had a smoothie the first night, because I was having those headaches, and I thought to myself, yes, I could ride it out, and I know it's a temporary thing. Usually it happens on day 2, but this time it was on day 1. But I thought, you know what, I'm not necessarily doing this to do no food. I'm doing this to just reset a little bit. And so I decided to opt for that smoothie, and I've had one just each evening at the moment, and it feels good, because it's basically a 24-hour fast, and then a 24-hour fast and a 24-hour fast, but with this a little bit of protein in. So I'm not getting the full benefits that I would normally, but I definitely am getting a lot, because digestion takes up a huge amount of energy in the body, and so I'm not needing to really digest much, if anything, most of the day. And so that's why my toe is probably healing, because I write about it in the book that I believe that the energy that would be used to digest is used instead elsewhere, and allowing you to heal the body and stuff. So, but before I go on to actually some of the way to on-ramp and off-ramp into fasting, I just wanted to read out some of the benefits. You mentioned a lot of benefits, but just wanted to make sure we don't miss any when it comes to, this is just intermittent fasting, not even 5-day fasting. But mobilizes the body's defense mechanisms, cleanses the body, gives the digestive organs a rest, helps prevent chronic and acute disease, reduces body fat, supports the maintenance of healthy body mass index, increases energy vitality, increases serotonin levels, resulting in improved sleeping patterns, quietens the body and mind, helps prevent signs of premature aging, clears away redness from sparkling eyes, healthier hair and nails, increases inner strength and focus, which we can talk about in a second, promotes better eating habits, fosters better impulse control definitely, restores the ability to eat moderately and sensibly, as well as all the other benefits like we talked about, with maybe during chemotherapy targeting the cancerous cells and not the healthy cells. But it is like,
it also stimulates norepinephrine. Is that right? Norepinephrine. And adrenaline, that's the one that most people will not be familiar with, but that leads to increased energy as well, which is kind of ironic, because you feel like you'd have low energy and you'd slump, but actually fasting stimulates more energy and more alertness, especially in fasted workouts. So you actually feel more alert, which you wouldn't expect. I wouldn't say you feel like you have more energy if you're going distance, but you certainly, there are other benefits.
I would say, here's why. Right? Here's why. I always go back to evolutionary biology, if you like, and how did we evolve? And if you think about it, if you were out in the savannas of Africa and you hadn't eaten for a couple of days, you really need to have super sharp eyes, focus, ability to catch that prey that you're looking for. And so things narrow in. And actually, it's kind of a reason why you shouldn't really go to bed too hungry either, because if you're going to bed too hungry, you won't sleep so much, because your body is primed for hunting. So, and that's also another reason why you don't probably feel hungry after eating, is because when you're running, your body maybe thinks it's in fight or flight, because fight or flight would be a running motion, and so your digestive system isn't going to work really when you're running, obviously. And so maybe that will help. Later on, you probably rest up a bit and you're like super hungry in a normal way. But interestingly enough, when I know I'm doing a fast, I can last 2, 3, 4 hours, no problem, without food. When I'm not doing a fast and I get that little bit of hunger pang, sometimes I can't wait that hour or that hour for cooking.
Yeah.
I have to eat something, like I'll get a tub of hummus or something, which happened last week, where I knew it would take me an hour to cook my dinner. I was like, I'm just going straight into that hummus because I couldn't wait that hour. Whereas now I can wait 5 hours, 10 hours, 50 hours.
We all have those days where we're just insatiable for food. I had one last week. I think I must have smashed about 5,000 calories, and I was just insatiably hungry all day, and I couldn't put my finger on why. I'd been in London, hadn't really done any workouts, so I think it was just seeing my daughter off at the airport, being on trains, different setup. I just ate all day. Since I got home, my wife, she made a big dinner. Because I first thing I said is I've been eating all day. She goes, I just made a big dinner. I was like, don't worry, I'm going to demolish it. Like I just can't stop eating.
Sometimes you have that. One of the other benefits, I thought I mentioned it, but inflammation is a big one for me. Stem cell production. Actually, a couple of documentaries. I mentioned one before, which is Simply Raw. I definitely recommend that, especially if you're listening and you've got like type 1 diabetes. Just watch that and see if I was correct in my memory. It was about 15 years ago I watched that. But the other one I quite liked, which you might have seen as well, Nick, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but we showed it on our juicing retreat that I ran about 10 years ago. Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead. Have you come across that one?
I don't know. I've seen so many docs. I can't even remember.
Well, this guy is an Australian guy, quite a well-off guy, but quite overweight, and he has a bunch of conditions, some of which may be like pretty serious. But anyway, he's never done anything like this before. I don't think he's even done a 24-hour fast. But he documents the whole experience, and it's I think 60 days he was going for just juicing, or 60 days he went. And actually, that reminds me, I used to think that you could only go about two. In my talks, I would often say, how long can you go without food? How long can you go without water, and so on. And I normally say with food, it's like a couple of months. But I came across a guy who runs a water-only fasting retreat in Costa Rica. And he said he had a client who came with stage 4 testicular cancer. And he did 4 months just on water, supervised. And his cancer disappeared as well. Now, he was quite overweight to begin with, so he had a lot of stored calories. The average person, I can't remember the number, but if it's 10 days, we'll do 20,000. So we have about 100,000 stored calories in us. We can last 2 months usually, not healthily necessarily, but without dying. This guy lasted 4 months, and stage 4 cancer disappeared, which is amazing.
I guess I'm assuming the cancer had nothing to feed on. And that's probably the reality, right? It just starved it.
I mean, Otto Warburg, who won the Nobel Prize many, many years ago, talks, I have the exact quote in my book, but he talks about how effectively when you replace oxygen in the body for fuel, i.e. you don't breathe correctly, and the body tends to feed on sugars, and these tend to cause cancerous cells as well. So if the body if the cancerous cells aren't being fed what they need, then they're going to die off.
I'm going a bit off piste here. I don't know if you've read the book Cured, but there was an interesting
no, you've mentioned it before.
Theory in this regarding cancer. The studies proved in the book to be very promising, but the governments at the time decided to follow a different track to what the pharmaceutical companies did. I need to go do some research on this, but there was the guy behind the studies in the book. I read it a little while ago. I talked about it on this book before. I was reading it when my dad was going through his cancer treatment, and it's specifically about cancer. But this particular experiment and not necessarily on humans, but on rats or mice or whatever. Instead of what we tend to do is we try and zap the cancer, or we try and starve the cancer. He took a different approach and overfed it, fed it everything it wanted to absolute over the top. And so what happened is in these particular studies, I have to go back to the book. He overfed it to a point where either the cancer stopped because it was too satiated, or almost killed itself. So it was it got to, or whatever. I don't know. I obviously don't know the science, but I remember reading it going, and I never followed that logic because it goes kind of against medicine and the way that we typically do things. It's counterintuitive to feed something that harms you. But the studies he was finding in this particular experiment, I bear in mind it's not humans, but he was saying when he was feeding the cancer to the point of giving it exactly what the cancer wanted, it actually effectively overate and killed itself, made itself unhealthy. I'll have to find the study, but it was an interesting, I know it's not really talking about fasting in terms of what we're talking about, but it was an interesting approach to finding an alternative way to fight cancer.
It's kind of like how my approach used to be to eating Ferrero Rocher, where I am all or nothing. And so my idea was I would buy those I think there used to be 16 in one of those boxes from memory.
Yeah.
And instead, I can't have just one or two, as you
No,
probably know.
I demolished a box of 16 last week, to be fair.
Oh, really? So my philosophy was, let me just get through all 16 in one go, so that I get sick of myself having it. And it tended to work because I wouldn't then have it for months afterwards. So yeah, maybe there's some
if you think about it differently, we're doing this as humans anyway, right? We're gorging on over-processed food. So maybe it was the kind of food that wasn't healthy, but it loved to feed on. I have to find the book. My sister read it recently.
I'm going to look it up after the call. But
if you think about humans, we gorge on. A lot of us, there is an obesity crisis and an early death crisis because we're eating crap food. If humans eat on stuff that we feel we need because it's too much sugar, too processed, we end up with a shorter lifespan as well. So if you think about it in those terms, kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing when it comes to fasting is that who said that we needed to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or 5 meals a day? No one really. If you think about, again, going back to the wild, you'll probably wake up without any food until you go hunting and find the food. Maybe you've got some left over from previous days, but you're supposed to be able to do a whole day's hunt like on an empty stomach, and then you would eat maybe once a day, right? Or possibly twice. I mean, so I don't have a rule with any of like eating. I just eat when I'm hungry or when I need it. So sometimes that might be twice a day. Sometimes that may be 5 times in a day. But this idea of it's basically social conditioning to say, breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of this and the other. It might not work for everybody. Some people, when they do intermittent fasting, they will typically skip breakfast and have lunch and dinner because socially it works better. And usually you're in a rush in the morning. I personally would prefer to effectively do breakfast or brunch and what I call dinner, so lunch and dinner combined, because that works better for my sleep. And also your body cells tend to have different times that they close down shop. And usually around sunset or 6, 7, 8 p.m., even maybe in the summer, things like your liver and kidney are going to start to close up shop for the night. And so I don't think it's a good idea personally to eat too late. I know you eat sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night.
We haven't eaten yet. That's going to be another
thing as well, especially if you haven't eaten all day and you've exercised loads, you don't want to go to bed hungry. So basically, there's no hard and fast rule. But talking about processed food, or talking about what people tend to eat a lot of and why it can make it a lot harder to start a fast, I would personally recommend, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking about doing a fast, in the preceding week or even 2 weeks, ideally beforehand, you start to limit or eliminate entirely the following things, in my experience, would be beneficial to eliminate. Things like meat, dairy, coffee, alcohol, sugar, and processed foods. If you took those out for a week beforehand, you will find that the fast and the headaches and everything else will be a lot easier than if you just went from going to do all that and then going into the fast. So, and also when you come out of it, again, gradually come out of it. Sometimes when I've done a fast as well, the longest I've done is 9 days, but the first 2 days and the last 2 days were juices and smoothies, with the middle 5 days being just juices. So that can be a nice on-ramp as well, where you start and top and tail it with juices and smoothies, some fiber, or, then you go into your water-only fast. But certainly, cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, dairy, meat, processed food, sugar, all of that is going to make it a lot harder. So I would say tail that off for a couple of weeks beforehand. You can go back to it later, but tail it off and then do it.
So before we sign off, how many days are you in now?
This is my 3rd day. And like I said, I don't know whether I'm going to break it tomorrow or the day after. Normally I have a plan and mentally I'm prepared, because I think that's the big thing is for me, I know you don't, and this time I haven't. You just go with the flow. Sometimes I put a deadline. I say I'm going to do at least 5 days, and then it's more my discipline, my willpower that's going to make sure I do the 5 days or 7 days or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, day 3, I'd be fine if I stopped it tomorrow or the next day. We'll see. And then I think what I might do though before my next blood test, which is next Tuesday, is possibly go from Sunday night to the Tuesday morning, because the blood test is at 10, and maybe just do water only, or maybe just do it from the Monday morning. I'm not sure. So we'll see. But certainly it'd be interesting to see if the results are more positive.
Well, I hope the blood test goes well. I think all of this chat of fasting, mate, it's making me hungry. So I'm going to go and grab my dinner. We've got barbecue going on downstairs.
It is making me hungry as well.
Very kindly prepared. So I'll let the listeners go and either start a fast or go and enjoy their dinners knowing they're not fasting, depending which camp you're in. But heed the advice. Make sure you're well enough of mind and body to undertake a fast. If you're unsure, go to Google Doctor or seek medical support or speak to GP.
Yeah.
And for those that can enable, there are some great benefits.
If you're injured, if you're suffering from an injury, for me, that's just been a massive reminder again. I don't know why I don't do it more often. Whenever I get injured, I should just be fasting for like 24, 48 hours and see what happens. Because if you think about it, when you're ill, you've got a cold or flu, you're not hungry. And the reason you're not hungry, I believe, is because your body wants to use that energy to heal your body, not digest the food. That's why you don't have an appetite a lot of the time when you've got the cold or a flu. And other reasons, I guess. But yeah, so I would say if you've got a bit of an injury, test it, right? If you've got a finger injury, like something minor, I'm not talking like a massive break, but something that's niggling you, give a fast 24 hours ago. You'll be amazed what you can just get in 24 hours done. Sure. I'm amazed with just 24 hours what it does.
Yeah, I always feel great afterwards. Maybe I'll just get one done sooner, but it ain't going to be today because I'm too much looking forward to dinner. So on that note, Harry, thank you, my friend. Listeners, good luck with your fasting journeys. And we'll catch you next time. Remember to find us on Instagram at mindful_pass_podcast. Put your listener questions in there as well. Had some great feedback on the Fit After 40 show. So thank you for all your messages for those that have tuned into that. And we're hoping to bring more episodes similar to that coming up soon. So thank you for being listeners. Remember to subscribe, follow, and like, and we'll be back again soon. Cheers, Harry.
We'll be back again very fast, as it were.
Fast. Oh, I like it.